Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 75th episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Pursuing Private Practice. Today, I will be interviewing Jennifer Mcgurk. Jennifer is a registered dietitian nutritionist who is on a mission to empower dietitian business owners to make an impact in this world. She is the CEO of Pursuing Private Practice. Her company offers the Dietitian Business School, which is a membership program to support dietitians with their business education, supervision, and accountability throughout various stages of building their businesses. Jennifer is also the host of the Pursuing Private Practice podcast. So welcome, Jennifer. I'm so excited to have you here today. Do you want to share a few words before we get started?
Sure. Thank you, Katie, so much for having me. Oh my gosh, I'm a big fan of your podcast, so I'm so thrilled to be a guest. And I'm just so excited to be here, and recording with you in this new year is just so awesome. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to have you. So let's start off with our first question. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and how you got into the private practice and business coaching space?
Yes. So like I said, before we hit record, I'm going to condense this story down because it really is a long story, as I'm sure everyone's business journey is. But I became a dietitian out of my own struggle with food. I struggled with an eating disorder in high school and college, and I'm very, very, very open about that because I want to share what eating disorder recovery can look like for other people. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I really did struggle with my relationship with food. Yeah. But that's how I became a dietitian, because I had a really good, unhealthy interest, I should say, in food. But throughout my journey of being a dietitian, I, did the most challenging thing I have ever done in my life. And I booked my very first therapy appointment at maybe 23 years old. And I started my journey of eating disorder recovery. And through that, I found the health at every size world. I found intuitive eating, found body liberation. I just was so moved and impacted both personally and professionally about a non-diet approach that I really decided, after a couple of years of being in recovery, that I wanted to do this work with other people. I just felt so moved that I had a message to give in this world and how much it impacted me and changed my life. I just wanted everyone else to feel that as well. So lo and behold, I tried to find a job in eating disorders. Not very many places were hiring when I was back in, 27. So I decided to start my own private practice. And I didn't know exactly that I would specialize in eating disorders at that point. I was still a little bit like 1 foot weight centric, 1 foot weight inclusive, as a lot of people, go through. But slowly but surely, I really did switch over my private practice into a full-blown eating disorders private practice, a weight inclusive approach. And I just had so many clients, and it was just so needed in the world that my business from there grew. And fast forward a couple of years and lots of ups and downs. I had my first son back in 2014, and having him was, definitely an identity shift. I don't want to say a midlife crisis by any point, but was an identity shift. And I said to myself, I want to be doing something a little bit different. I don't know if I want to counsel this many people anymore. I mean, at that point, I had 30 people on my caseload at that point, and it was just a lot. And I had hired someone to help me with my maternity leave, but I really wanted to work with professionals. So lo and behold, Pursuing Private Practice was born at that point as a side hustle, very much a side hustle. And, that was 2015, 16. And here we are today. So I would love to get more into that story of how it evolved, but that is really how Pursuing Private Practice came to be and how I found myself in the business coaching world.
Awesome. Well, that was a great condensed version of the story.
Very condensed.
And yes. And I love that kind of journey of how you really went with this focus of I want to help other people pursuing your passion. Mm-hmm. And then as you've evolved, let's help other dietitians do the same. So I absolutely love that. And I don't think I realized that you've been doing Pursuing Private Practice for over 5 years now. That's awesome.
Yes. And the journey of that company has been so so many more ups and downs actually than my group private practice. So my solopreneur journey of opening up my private practice and getting clients, of course, there were ups and downs and there were twists and turns, but the offer was very consistent in the sense that it was always one-on-one. And when I grew and decided to scale, I hired another dietitian. It was one-on-one. Pursuing private practice has gone through multiple ebbs and flows and has morphed into lots of different things. It was a book. It was a course. It was kind of an accidental group coaching program. And now finally, Dietitian Business School is a membership program for dietitians that are really wanting to build their business at all stages of business. And I have a full team supporting me. So to see the growth from that quote unquote side hustle to now is really such a crazy journey.
Yeah, that is awesome. So let's dive a little bit into the getting started with private practice. I know there's a lot of dietitians who are interested in starting a private practice side hustle. So is building a practice on the side realistic, or does someone really need to be doing this full time to have success in the private practice space?
Oh my gosh, I will say private practice is perfect for a side hustle. Perfect. And the thing is, a lot of us cannot jump into something to private practice and then all of a sudden a week later get a full caseload of 30 people. It took me, at least, and I think I'm a pretty talented counselor, it took me 3 years to go from very, very, very part-time, my first client in private practice, to be able to actually quit my full-time job. It took me 3 years. Now, of course, I want it to happen faster for a lot of other people, but it took me a while. Granted, I didn't know what I was doing, but it was such a perfect opportunity for me to make some more money on the side. I really had such a passion for the work that I was doing. So it wasn't hard for me to see a couple people on the side way back when. Of course, you have business expenses. And at the time, I was an in-person private practice. So I had to make sure that I was covering my expenses and then I could pay myself a little something. But because I had my full-time job, I didn't need to be paying myself X amount of money to live. Like I had my full-time job and then, I had 2 part-time jobs and then I had 1 part-time job as my trajectory of growing my business had to have me, quit one thing and then another thing. But it was just so great. Like I got, a ton of experience in the eating disorders world. I got to meet a lot of people in a slower timeline than I think you have to if you jump in full time. I got to kind of implement my systems in a way that felt good to me because I was only able to really work, I think at that point, maybe 10 hours a week. And then have 2 part-time jobs on the side that I think were like 32 hours total at that point. I might be wrong, but it was something like that. So I did actually create a full-time job with my 2 part-time jobs and a private practice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I hope that people really hear that. If you want to do private practice, it's okay if you're just a side hustler. You can totally do this. It's how Jennifer did it. It's how a lot of people do it. So it's definitely a side hustle you can pursue.
Yeah. And then like there will come a point where you have to make that decision whether or not you want to go all in, but there's a lot of people that see, I mean, just as an example number, don't think that this has to be you, but there are a lot of people that see 4 clients a week in private practice and make a couple $100 a week, like maybe even higher than a couple $100 a week. And it's amazing because you don't work a ton on the side, quote unquote, on the side. Like you have to get things set up and you have to have a flow in your business, but it's a great way to produce a little bit more revenue.
Yeah, for sure. So if someone is brand new to private practice, what do they need to start up their practice?
Yes. So this is a great question and something that I see all the time. And I'm always sending people to my free roadmap on my website, pursuingprivatepractice.com/join, because it definitely gives you the 10 key steps to actually start your private practice. But I will say the most important thing is that you have your liability insurance and you have a couple of the legal things taken care of. And then marketing. A lot of people feel like they have to get a fancy website up and they have to have all this social media down and they have to have like this perfect, array of handouts for their clients. And that is not true. You need the legal stuff down and you need to think about how you're going to get your first person. And that's kind of what you need to start.
Yeah. I think that's really important to break it down because I've seen so many dietitians, part of our perfectionist personalities where we want to have all of our ducks in a row, everything perfect before we even start. But I love that. It's like, make sure you're legally legit. Now find your first client. That's Perfect.
I know. And I feel so bad because there are times in your business where you will want to rebrand, get a fancy website, do all the things to make sure that you have this quote unquote look out there, but that's not what you should do at the beginning. I'm a really strong believer in that. Like, don't go spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to have a website up when you really just need to make sure that you are okay protected wise. And, that's it. I mean, I would actually spend money on an EHR system before I spent money on a fancy website, to be very honest with you.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think kind of what you hit on there, there's certain things that can come later, things that you could do later as you're building your brand. So awesome. So I know you mentioned the electronic health record is something you'd recommend for dietitians. Do you have any tips for dietitians who might be like, oh, do I need to get an EHR?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is what I will say about EHRs. They all do the same thing. So practice. I mean, can I say names on this podcast?
You can say all the names you want. Yep.
Simple practice better, Calyx, healthy, acuity, intake Q. What's another one? I'm probably missing one that I'm going to get an email about because someone's like, that's my one. But honestly, they all do the same thing. So I kind of consider it like restaurants. You're all going to get fed at the end of the day. Yep. Do you want this type of food? Do you want that type of food? Do you want your food in 30 minutes? Do you want your food in 2 hours? Like, it really honestly is about the experience of you interacting with your electronic medical record, what feels good to you, what flow feels good to you, how you're, setting up your business. But at the end of the day, they are all the same. So don't think that there's a perfect, answer for that. There are pros and cons to every electronic medical record.
Yes, I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because again, this is something we can get caught in the weeds on. Don't get caught in the weeds, make a choice, move forward.
Yeah. And they all have I think most of them have either free trials or like your first 3 clients for free. So just like get started and try one. And then if you don't like it, move on to the next one.
Awesome. So can we talk a little bit about marketing for business owners? It seems like getting clients like in the door is one of the most challenging parts of having a private practice. So what marketing advice can you share with our listeners?
Yes. Okay. So my biggest tip for this is we are all going to have different marketing plans depending on our ideal client. Yep. You have to figure out where your ideal client is hanging out and already looking for the information that your business provides. Because remember, businesses solve problems, and it's obviously a little bit more complicated than that, but at the core of your business, you are solving a problem for your ideal client. So they already maybe know that they have a problem, maybe not. And again, that's like the conversation in marketing that you have to figure out, but they are looking for a solution for something that they are going through. Where are they looking for that solution? So for private practice, I specialize in eating disorders. I know that my ideal client is definitely probably looking at therapists. They might be looking to medical professionals in terms of like doctors or psychiatrists or something along the line. They, parents are seeing stuff in their kids. So they might be connecting with pediatricians, guidance counselors at school. And I know where my ideal client is hanging out. So I'm going to try to get my business in front of those other people that they're seeing, in front of different avenues that they're looking for. I am going to try to figure out how to say, hey, this is my group practice. We solve problems over here. Like, we specialize in eating disorder counseling. We believe in eating disorder recovery, intuitive eating, health at every size. And what problem am I solving for my ideal client? So that is really like marketing 101. And a lot of people, I mean, the thing that I see all the time, Katie, which I'm sure you probably see too, people say like, oh, I have to be on Instagram. Yep. I have to spend like 3 hours on Instagram and creating this perfect social media feed. And then they get really mad that, they post and just all other dietitians comment on their stuff and they're not finding their ideal client on Instagram. Not to say your ideal client is not on Instagram. It just depends on your business model and, who you're serving. So that is really kind of what to think about. Like, if you are doing all these different marketing channels, which one is actually driving results to your business?
Yes. And I think that's really helpful to point out that it really is individual based on what they're doing and who they're targeting, because we can see dietitians having amazing success with Facebook, amazing success with Instagram, amazing success with referrals with doctors. But, a lot of it, like you said, comes down to who is your ideal client, where are they hanging out, and finding out what works best for your business. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't underestimate the power of relationships. I mean,
Mm,
the thing is, when it comes to business, like sometimes when you're starting, you say, oh my gosh, but I don't know anybody, I'm new to my community. Email all, like we all have our circle, and our circle is really like our circle and then like their circles. So
yep.
start with your friends and family, start with your colleagues, start with people that start with other dietitians and just say, hey, here's my business. I'm opening, I'm new. I don't exactly know a whole lot of people. Can someone connect me? Can you connect me with someone that might be helpful for my business? And I think that that is just so powerful and so just underused. A lot of people
Yes.
don't think about that. They think I have to
Yeah.
go try to get all the cold leads when really, come over and try to get warm leads.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much power in networking. I know when I hear about a dietitian specialized in an area, and if I find, oh, someone needs care, I always try to connect them. And I think a lot of dietitians and friends and family, like it's
Mhm.
the social network before social network, right?
Yes.
Like,
the genuine social network.
OG. Yep. Awesome. So we've been talking about getting started, having a side hustle private practice, but let's talk
Mhm.
about what would it look like, or what would the point be where one would transition from a side hustle to going in full time in private practice.
Yeah. So at this point, you're probably growing, you're really building your audience. And I mean, for the dietitians in my program and the people that I've helped, and I was like this too, like there just comes a point where you're just a little bit too burnt out because you're
Mm,
doing too much. And
yep.
I don't know if you experienced that too, Katie. I would love to hear about your experience too, where it's just like your regular job is wonderful and great. And a lot of people don't actually want to leave their regular job. So I just want to, give a shout out to everyone that has a job. That's totally fine to have a job and have a business. But there just comes a point where there's just not enough hours in the week for you to be able to do both. And for a lot of people, it just comes down to having too much business for their business and kind of seeing the, I guess, landscape in front of you that you could actually be making more if you could give yourself 5 more hours of your time, 10 more hours of your time, and
Mhm.
just taking that leap of faith that it's time for me to leave this job to do business full time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll share a little bit since I just
Yeah.
left my full-time job. So I will say I actually left before the point of burnout, but I also recognize
Yeah.
that the level I was going towards the end, I wouldn't have been able to sustain long term. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot we can do in the interim, right? Short term. But for me, I didn't hit the point of burnout yet, but I also work with a business coach. I'm in an amazing mastermind. And they told me ahead of time, they're like, Katie, you need to make a
Yeah.
decision now. Like, don't crash and burn. So I did leave before the point of burnout, but I think had I continued to try to do everything, I would have burnt out. I got to the point where honestly, I was loving my business so much more than my job. I mean, I love
Mhm.
my job. Don't get me wrong. I worked at the VA. I had an amazing career,
Yeah.
but I was kind of like not excited about it anymore, where I was
Yeah.
so excited about entrepreneurship and almost feeling like, oh man, this full-time job is getting in the way of the fun stuff. So that
Yeah.
was part of it. But then the other piece, at least for me, that really led to leaving my full-time job is when I crunched the numbers. I looked at how
Yeah. The
much money I
financial
was
piece.
making. Yep. Looking at how much money I was
Mhm.
making in my side hustle for the amount of hours I was working versus the amount of hours I was working my full-time job and making. And I was making 4 times more money in my side hustle than my full hustle. So doing the math, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
gosh, if I do this full time, it made sense. So
It
that's
makes so
kind of
much
my
sense.
story.
Yeah. No, I've told people I've given the same type of advice as well. It's like, okay, well, you take home this much money from your full-time job, and do you have benefits, 401k, healthcare, paid time off, whatever it may be? Think about like, okay, how much is your full-time job really worth? Because
Yep.
it's not just at the end of the day, you're making this paycheck if you have those other benefits too. And
Yep.
then think about like, how would you have to make that money in your private practice to cover that? And sometimes I say like, okay, 50% feels good with you, go for it. Do you need 75%? That type of thing. So the nuance of the individual situation, I think is a very a one person, one solution type of thing. Like it's not the same for everybody.
Yep. Yep, for sure. Because everyone has a different situation. If they have a
Yeah.
significant other with insurance versus
Yeah.
them. And yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
family support, I mean, privilege, personality,
Yep.
all these things go into building a business. It's not just like a one framework fits all type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I had some spreadsheets. I had all my numbers in a row. I figured out how much would it cost for X, Y, and Z. Because you're right. When you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, you don't have the benefits of work like with the insurance. But the thing about insurance,
Mhm.
you could buy your own, like just incorporate
I
that
know.
into your finances, right? Like
Yeah.
you got to make enough money to cover your insurance. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like, at least in New York, I don't want to say this is true for every single place, but we were on an Obamacare plan for 3 years when my husband also had his own job. And then he has changed careers since that point. But basically it was fine.
Yep.
People are so nervous about it, but I literally like went to my county office and I said, hey, we're looking for health insurance. And like, you could also go through a broker. And it wasn't that, I mean, it was scary, but it wasn't that hard to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So my next question, I would love it if you could share a little bit more with our listeners about your dietitian business school membership and how you help dietitians who do want to pursue private practice.
Yes, thank you so much for letting me do that. I feel so proud of this program. And I think it is a really good example for people to see what is possible from a side hustle. I feel like we've talked about that many times now, but literally pursuing private practice started off as an idea. I wrote a short book on private practice. And then, like I said, it morphed into an online course, it morphed into a group program, and now it's dietitian business school. So you never know what will happen when you start your side hustle. So I really do believe in business education for all different stages of business. I feel, I mean, as you agree too, like we just don't get this at school. We don't know how to run a business. And I feel so passionate about teaching people not only the business knowledge of marketing and advertising and selling and all like the quote unquote traditional stuff, but also boundaries and leaning into your strengths and using your personality to really set goals for yourself and figure out what this business is going to mean for you. So my business curriculum is 20 lessons. It ranges from, marketing to networking to systems, to hiring a team member, to really figuring out, like I said, personality stuff and boundaries. And that is one part of dietitian business school. And the other part is supervision. So because my program is really geared for non-diet dietitians, there's something about being a non-diet dietitian that I feel like we have this superpower in the sense of we're so connected to our message and our mission means so much to us. And then I'm seeing a lot of non-diet dietitians struggle with the boundary part of being a private practice business owner. A lot of us care so much about our message that, I mean, typically what we see is like people putting, no cancellation policy into effect, or people caring so much about clients that they, lower, like sliding scales is something that we see a lot where they have 20 different sliding scale rates. There's something about our population that we care so much about helping people with their relationship with food that sometimes that stuff gets in the way. So I love to have supervision as part of dietitian business school. I love to make sure that we feel connected, not only with case consultations and like what, helping each other out with our cases, but also what's going on inside with us emotionally and taking care of ourselves and kind of knowing your boundaries and protecting your boundaries and growing as a business owner in that aspect too. And then the final part of my program is a kick butt community. There's lots of programs out there for business. And I feel like when we are leaning on one another in this non-diet approach, a lot of us are just so eager to help one another out because we have a very, very similar mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And, I'm part of a community myself of a business mastermind. I have my blogging program where we have this amazing community of dietitian bloggers. And it's the same thing. Community is everything.
Yeah.
And isn't
it so cool though? Like, so here's the thing. I feel like you can join a business group and there's lots of different people that are in different situations and it can be fine. But is it like, it's same with your blogging group. It's like when people have a common goal that connects them right away, you don't have to do anything to build that trust among the group. So I feel like that's what we've done here at Dietitian Business School. And I'm sure it's the same for you too. It's like, it's just so amazing to see the magic in that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of those almost unintended good consequences of business where I'm sure it's the same for you, where I'm like, I love this group and I just can't believe I get to work with these humans. And it's, it is such a blessing. So, So I love that. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit about Dietitian Business School. I'm a really big fan of dietitians continuing their education outside of traditional school and learning all of these business skills. While yes, there is cost, there is time, there's all types of, commitments and investments to joining types of programs like Jennifer's program, but it's going to give you so much benefit in the long term. You're going to reach your goals faster. You're going to make money faster. You're going to make impact faster. So I love the work that you're doing. And thank you for sharing that with our listeners. I'll have your information in the show notes.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Yes. My biggest goal, we want everyone to get their return on their investment. Absolutely. That's why this company exists.
Yep. And I've found for myself, the more I've invested myself in courses, coaching programs, I've made back every penny and way more pennies than I ever imagined possible. So I love that we're starting to see the shift of this is becoming more normal, because there's a lot of cool things that we can do as dietitians in person, online, to make impact in this world. So I love the work that you're doing, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Katie. I appreciate it.
So let's try to end this episode with a little bit of action items. So that way it's not just people learning and saying like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. What are some action items that you would have for dietitians or RDs to be who are listening, who want to start a private practice side hustle? So how can they make that shift from dreaming to doing?
Okay. Number one, I would say you have to have some sort of accountability for yourself. So tell somebody, like find a business best friend, find someone even at your job that just kind of, would maybe keep a secret if you have to keep it a secret, but find somebody there, find a friend, a family member, someone that you can kind of say like out loud, this is what you're going to do. Because a lot of us stop because we're scared.
Yep.
And I feel like if we have someone in our corner cheering us on, I feel like makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
That would definitely be tip number one. Tip number two, I would say for me, I feel like when I went to my county clerk's office and got my DBA, it was the sign of just, I have started. So a lot of us kind of have it in our head. I mean, my gosh, I had plans that I had written out in terms of some handouts and like what my website was going to say before I even had that piece of paper. Literally just go get that piece of paper, open up your business bank account. You don't have to keep thousands of dollars in your business bank account. Just go open it, because then you are really taking action into starting a business. And three, I would say, get over the fear of doing it wrong. Of course, you're going to do something wrong. Of course, you are going to fail. So I think the sooner you can accept that, and I know that that's a weird action item, but I think that it has to be one. Like as soon as you can accept the fact that you are going to do something wrong and that it's a lot of experimenting at the beginning, it gets a little bit easier to actually quote unquote fail. Yes. Because it's expected, you know, and that will help you get to the next step. Because like at the beginning, it's all about just taking the next right step. It's not about the end result. It's literally, what can you do tomorrow?
Yeah. Oh, these are such good action items. So number one, accountability. Speak it out into the world, my friends. Say, I'm going to start a private practice and tell someone. So number two, so like you said, start your business. You mentioned a DBA, a doing business as, or even for people who maybe they need to file their business, sole proprietor, a limited liability company. I will tell you, that's actually the thing that I did. I've been side hustling for a while, but then when I made the decision to start an LLC, that was my, almost speaking out into the world, this isn't a hobby anymore. I'm going all in. And it was like, there was something about that really, it shifted in me from just a hobby to no, this is a business. Let's do it. And then your last tip was to let go of the fear of doing things wrong. I love that. Embrace imperfectionism. I will tell you, I've shifted so much in my business. I'm excited about failure, because failure means you are doing the thing, and there is no failure unless you just give up. Failing, air quotes, teaches you lessons, right? And there's so much we learn from that to continue to pivot and grow. So that is great advice, because a lot of people are scared of failure, but once you embrace, like, no, it's part of the process and it's not a bad thing. Those are great action items, Jennifer. Thank you.
You're welcome, Katie. I'm so glad it resonated with you. So I love it.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was really fun chatting with you and actually getting to meet you for the first time. I've been following you online for quite a while, so it's really exciting to meet you in real Zoom.
So
life.
Awesome. I know. Real life.
Yeah. So where can people find you online?
Yeah. So my website is pursuingprivatepractice.com. There are so many freebies there that you can download if you're interested in starting. I also have a marketing boot camp. We have lots of different things that you could download. So that website's a great resource. And then Instagram is at pursuing.private.practice. And I will say, one of the things that, there's diet culture in business all over the place. And one of the things that really started to bother me was that I saw so many people online on Instagram, like kind of acting like they ran their account. Like, I am a legit true CEO with a huge team. I don't run my Instagram account anymore. So if you do message Pursuing Private Practice on Instagram, you will get Megan, who is my marketing director, and she can definitely take care of anything that you need. And we are not afraid to say that out loud to everybody that, I am not on the social media account as much as I used to be. So
Yep.
you'll get Megan if you message Pursuing Private Practice.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put the link to your website, your Instagram, and also your podcast in the show notes so people can learn more from you. So yeah, again, thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome, Katie. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, guys. Be sure to head on over to the Dietitian Side Hustle website at dietitiansidehustle.com and check out our coaching page to learn about all the ways that we can work together. Have an amazing day, and I'm so proud of you for taking the initiative to listen to this podcast. Now go out there and get it done. Bye, guys.